Dear students, welcome to our science episodes. Today we are going to continue discussing chemical compounds. Types of compounds. What about acids? Do you know acids? They are compounds that dissociate in water, producing positive ions of hydrogen. They have sour taste, like the lemon and orange. They change the color of the litmus to red. So if we dip a blue litmus paper in an acid, it will turn to red. And this is due to the presence of the hydrogen ion. Here are some of the chemical formula of acids. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, sulfuric acid, H2SO4, and nitric acid, HNO3. The chemical formula of acids always starts with hydrogen joined to a negative atomic group except the hydroxide group, or a non-metal except oxygen. So you can find a negative atomic group joined to a hydrogen ion but not hydroxide group, and you can find a non-metal joined to the hydrogen like the chlorine but not the oxygen. Of course, if the oxygen is joined to the hydrogen, it will form water, not acid, not an alkali. These are the bases or the alkalis. They are compounds that decompose in water, producing negative hydroxide ions. They have bitter taste and slippery like soap, and they change the color of the litmus paper into blue. So if you will dip a red litmus paper into a base, it will change into blue due to the presence of the hydroxide ion. These are some examples of bases: sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, ammonium hydroxide. The chemical formula of bases end with the hydroxide group. It always ends with a hydroxide group joined to a metal or to a positive atomic group. If you have two unknown test tubes, one of them contains acid and the other one contains base, how can you distinguish between them or differentiate between the two substances? Simply, we will use the litmus paper. So the acid will turn the litmus paper into red, and the base will turn the red litmus paper into blue. Types of compounds. So we took acids, we took bases, and here are the third type of compound, which are oxides. Oxides are elements that join to oxygen, producing either metal or non-metal oxides. Let's see together. So anything that combines with oxygen, sometimes they are non-metals and sometimes they are metals. Metal oxides like calcium oxide and zinc oxide, non-metal oxides like carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide. The fourth compounds are salts. They are produced from chemical combination of a positive metal ion with a negative non-metal ion. Look to this, sodium chloride. Sodium is a metal and chlorine is a non-metal. When they will combine together or react together, they will form salt. Sodium sulfide, the sodium with the sulfur. A positive metal ion with a negative atomic group. So sodium sulfate. Sodium is a metal and the sulfate is a negative atomic group. Magnesium carbonate. Magnesium is a metal and the carbonate is an atomic group. A positive atomic group with a negative nonmetal ion. Ammonium chloride. This is a positive atomic group with a negative nonmetal ion. The chlorine is a nonmetal. Ammonium bromide. The ammonium is the positive atomic group and the bromine is the nonmetal. A positive atomic group with a negative atomic group. So ammonium sulfate, ammonium nitrate. Examples of salts. The most popular is the table salt. This is the popular name. The scientific name is the sodium chloride and the chemical formula is NaCl. Another salt which is the Chile saltpeter. The scientific name is the sodium nitrate and the chemical formula is NaNO3. The blue vitriol or the hydrated copper sulfate. We write it as copper sulfate, CuSO4, attached to 5 H2O, 5 water molecules. That's why it's called hydrated. But what are the properties of salts? Salts exist in earth crust or are dissolved in water. They vary in some of their properties. They have different taste, color, smell, and the ability to dissolve in water. So, according to the ability or the solubility of salt in water, they are classified into salts that dissolve in water, like sodium chloride, potassium sulfate, calcium nitrate, sodium sulfide, and salts that do not dissolve in water, silver chloride, lead iodide, and lead sulfate. Let me give you a tip to memorize them. What is the most popular salt to dissolve in water? Yes, the sodium chloride, the table salt. We all know the table salt, it's a sodium chloride. Okay, remove the sodium and put silver. So it's the silver chloride that do not dissolve in water. Another example is potassium sulfate. Potassium sulfate will dissolve in water. Then remove the potassium and put lead. Lead sulfate will not dissolve in water. Now it's time for questions. How can you differentiate between sodium chloride and silver chloride salts? By their ability to dissolve in water. Add water to the two compounds. Sodium chloride will dissolve in water, while silver chloride will not dissolve. Identify the types of compounds and their chemical formula. Sulfuric acid, H2SO4. Do you notice the presence of the hydrogen at the beginning of the formula? So it's an acid. It's a hydrogen combined with a negative atomic group. Magnesium oxide, MgO. Of course, it's an oxide because it's a metal combined with oxygen. Sodium chloride, of course, it's a salt, NaCl. Sodium hydroxide, it's a base, sodium hydroxide, NaOH, because of the hydroxide group combined with the metal. Aluminum oxide, again, it's an oxide, Al2O3. Now list some examples of salts that dissolve in water. As I told you, the most popular example is the sodium chloride, NaCl. Another one is the potassium sulfate, K2SO4. What about salts that do not dissolve in water? So remove the sodium from the chloride and put silver. So it's silver chloride instead. Remove the potassium and put lead sulfate. Thank you. Dear students, thank you for watching. See you later in other science episodes.